Well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode. Use of film has really surged in recent years, and as I understand it, it's been really taken up by lots of younger people who weren't around for the first time film was around. They've grown up with digital photography and want to know what this magical tech is all about. But if you want to buy your first film camera, well, that can be a really daunting prospect because there are just so many to choose from. But fear not, because today we're going to make everything clear, and by the end of this video you should have a much clearer idea of which film camera is right for you. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is film formats. Now, there were lots of different sizes of film used in the film days, and there are lots of different cameras to accept those different sizes of film, and they tend to have different characters based on what film they're using. By far the most common film you will encounter, it's the most common today and it was always the most common, is 35mm. And most of these cameras, in fact, are 35mm cameras. About 100 years ago it was used as cinema film, it still is, and somebody had the bright idea of turning it to run horizontally and putting it into a stills camera, and that format's still used today. It gives a great balance between size and resolution. It means that cameras and lenses are not too big, but you still get that resolution, you still get a good high resolution, especially if you're using a slower film. Another format you'll often encounter is 110. We've got some 110 cameras here, and the size of film these use is the same size as 16mm movie film. It comes preloaded in cassettes. You just slot it into the camera and you shoot your frames. These were absolutely ubiquitous in the 70s and 80s. This is quite a fancy one. This is a Rollier 110. Most of them were plastic like this, possibly with plastic lenses. I'm not sure if this has a plastic lens. Simple point and shoots. These were everywhere. Not so common today because the film is not so common. It is still made by some manufacturers and you can still get it developed, but it's nowhere near as easy as 35mm, and it has something of a lower resolution as well. Another format you're going to encounter is Polaroid. This is a Polaroid instant film camera. These shoot instant pictures. You don't have to wait and get them developed and get your prints back. The print is ejected straight out of the camera. It was something of a miracle in its day, and it kind of still is a miracle, certainly in my eyes anyway. This is a slightly fancy one, an SLR, but we'll go over the other types shortly. Film for these tends to be pretty expensive. That's the only problem. Shooting Polaroids was always an expensive business, and it remains an expensive business to this day. Lots of fun though, and a fantastic technology. Let's have a look at 35mm cameras. Well, there are two main types you will encounter. They are the Rangefinder cameras, of which this is a rather early example from 1932. This is a somewhat later example from the late 70s. And of course they got all the tech as they went along, as time passed by, auto exposure and things like that. There are the FSU rangefinders. These are lovely old cameras. The term rangefinder, let me define for you, make clear for you what a rangefinder is. It's a focusing mechanism and it sits in the top of the housing here. Okay, so that's a rangefinder camera. The other main type of camera you'll encounter is an SLR camera. This is an SLR. This is a Praktica SLR. These tend to be a little larger than rangefinders. and you look directly through the lens on an SLR. On a rangefinder, you don't look directly through the lens, but on an SLR, you look, when you put your eye to the eyepiece, you look directly through the lens and see exactly what the camera sees. So it's a very, very accurate view. And what you see in the viewfinder is exactly what you'll end up with in your photograph. With a rangefinder, you don't look through the lens, you look through this little viewfinder here, and that's true with the old rangefinders and with the modern ones too. So each has a focusing aid, and that is absolutely vital. Don't begin film photography without a focusing aid, because you're going to have a lot of disappointments. Each has a focusing aid and they work in different ways. Let's have a closer look at each, beginning with a rangefinder camera. It's the FSU, former Soviet Union, Zorky 4K rangefinder. This is a beautiful camera, it really is nice, but let's have a look at what rangefinder means. So on this camera, you look through this eyepiece here and you will see a double image in the eyepiece. It's got all sorts of mirrors and prisms and trickery in the top here, under the top cover. And this little window is what supplies the double image. So you're going to see a double image in the viewfinder, and when you turn the focus ring, that double image will come together. And when it comes together, you're focused. And it doesn't matter what rangefinder you're using. It doesn't matter if you're using a very fancy model, one of the latest Leicas. It doesn't matter whether you're using a popular model from the 70s or 80s. And it doesn't matter whether you're using this old camera from 1932. The principle is exactly the same. When the double image comes together, then you're focused, and that is what a rangefinder is. It's very simple, it's very quick, it's very efficient, and rangefinder cameras tend to be a bit more quiet and rather smaller as well. The disadvantage is that they rarely focus closer than 3 feet or 1 meter. You can see the closest focusing mark there. If we can actually focus, the closest focusing mark there is 1 meter. They rarely go closer than that. They sometimes go to 0.7 meters, but if you want to go close, don't buy a rangefinder, because they don't go very close. There's also the issue of not looking directly through the lens. You're actually looking through this viewfinder here when you look through this window. So you're not going to see exactly what the lens sees. There is a possibility for error, and if you want absolute accuracy, this is not the camera for you. However, if you do want a lovely, quiet, small, simple camera that will really work well for you in any situation you can imagine apart from close, these are fantastic cameras to buy. Here's our more modern rangefinder, which is this one, the Konica C35, and you can see, just like the old Zorky, it's got an extra little window there. I do hope you can see that. This is the main viewfinder, and you just look through there and you can see a split image. And turn the focus ring to focus. The principle of operation is exactly the same. This one has auto exposure though, and that is a really nice thing. So that's rangefinders. The focusing device is the rangefinder. It's in the top of the camera here, and you focus by bringing that split image together. I really like rangefinders, and in fact I really like this rangefinder. This is one of my favorites. It might just be my favorite rangefinder. This is the Yashica Electro 35. It has a lovely f1.7 lens, and the way it exposes is stunning. It's accurate shot after shot. I just couldn't unsettle it. So a really stunning camera. Okay, let's look at SLR cameras now. This is a typical SLR camera. This is the Nikon, which one is this? This is a Nikon FM, a really beautiful camera, a manual camera. There's also an automatic exposure version together with a manual option. Very, very nice cameras, very, very simple, very, very rugged. These cameras have a different focusing aid. Let's have a closer look. Okay, there's our Nikon FM, and the immediate difference you can see is this hump on the top. A rangefinder camera doesn't have that, and inside there is a prism. In fact, I think I've got one. Hold on. This directs the image from the lens straight into your eye, and you can see that it kind of reproduces the pattern of the mirror hump on the top of an SLR camera. If you look there, you can see that actually they're a very similar shape. This one's out of an Olympus, so it's slightly different. This is an incredible thing because it directs the light from the lens up a very complex pathway, a mirror here, through into the prism, bang, into your eye, which looks through this window here. When you take a shot, the mirror flips up. Let me take the lens off and show you. When you take a shot, that mirror will flip up out of the way and allow the light to go straight from the lens, not into your eye or through the prism, but straight from the lens onto the film. Did you see that? The mirror actually flips up out of the way. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So on these cameras, what you get is an absolutely exact representation of what will appear on the film, and it's very, very easy to focus with one of these. They have a split image, the same as a rangefinder does, that comes together and moves further apart. They also have little micro prisms that give an indication of focusing, and you can see just from the general level of focus in the frame as well. So lots and lots of focusing aids on these. They do have a classic vintage look, as do the rangefinders, and they're very, very cool cameras. You don't have to buy expensive ones. That's a Nikon one, but there are less expensive ones that work just as well and are just as nice. This one is a Praktica. There's an East German SLR. It looks different. It's not quite as nicely finished, and it's not quite as solid or rugged feeling, but my goodness, are these good cameras. Exactly the same principle. A prism here, lens on the front, eye at the back, mirror here that flips up out of the way and lets that light come back onto your film. So these are really good for getting exact and precise images, and they're also really good for lenses, shooting lenses longer than 135mm. Pretty much the longest focal length you're going to shoot on a rangefinder is 135mm, and that's due to technical difficulties. Moreover, if you want to mount extra lenses on a rangefinder, certainly if it's an old rangefinder, you're going to have to get one of these, a separate finder. You won't need one of those on a newer rangefinder, but on an older one you will. SLR shutters do tend to be a little more noisy than rangefinders. Here's an SLR shutter. That's quite noisy. Here is a nice quiet rangefinder shutter. That's much quieter. Right, let's think about prices. Now, for both SLRs and rangefinders, you don't need to buy a fancy camera to get a really nice camera. We've already talked about, briefly, the Praktica cameras. These sell for about £20 to £30. They're really, really cheap. They've got all of the features, certainly in shooting terms, all of the features that this Nikon has got. I can't think of any features that the Nikon has extra over the Praktica. So this is a really fully equipped camera. It's got a light meter in the viewfinder there, so exposure is really easy. It's an M42 mount, which is a screw mount, a simple screw thread, so you just screw the lenses off like that and screw them back on again. Whereas the Nikon here has a bayonet mount. Now this will only accept Nikon mount lenses, and those can be quite expensive. M42, there are a lot cheaper range of lenses available. We've got the big brands, Nikon, Olympus over here. This is a beautiful little camera. These are the Olympus OM Zuiko cameras. These are small, and I think maybe my favorite SLRs. I absolutely love these. And then there are Canon cameras also. Those are sort of the top shelf brands. They were top shelf in their day, and they're still kind of top shelf now. But a good one of those with, say, an f2 or an f1.8 lens is only going to cost you, what, from around 100 to 150 pounds, depending on condition. So that's not a massive outlay. But if you don't want to spend that much, one of these, a Praktica, or any of the off-brand makes like Vivitar or Cosina, or makes like that, the makes that were made for people who really wanted to do photography, cared about their photography, wanted control over the image, but didn't want to shell out a load of cash. Those are still good cameras, and they've got some good lenses as well. So you're probably going to pay anywhere for a good SLR, anywhere from between 30 to 150 pounds. And it's a similar situation with rangefinders as well. This rangefinder, which is the camera I learned photography on, this is not just the model that I learned on, this is the actual camera that I learned on. This is the camera that my dad gave me when I was 14, and I still have it very proudly, and I still use it. It's a fantastic little machine. It's got an M39 screw mount, so it takes lots and lots of lenses. Probably thousands of lenses were made for it, including all the Leica L39 lenses. So you've got some really good glass to go at, but you needn't bother with Leica glass. This is an Industar 61. This is a really, really nice little lens. It's an f2.8 50mm. It was my only lens for about 10 years till I started branching out a little bit into photography, and I made some nice images with this. So you can get one of these for 20 to 30 pounds. It's got a built-in light meter, unlike a lot of these simple manual rangefinders. And this one's lasted the test of time. This one is, gosh, what, 40 odd years old now, and it's still working, it's still shooting. So they're good machines. Point and shoot, so the other type of 35mm camera that I'd like to show you. This is the Nikon L35AF. My favourite point and shoot. I do like point and shoots, actually. This is a Konica point and shoot that I'm pretty much convinced was made as a rival to the L35AF, because it has the same type of lens, f2.8 35mm, and it's actually quite a similar camera in use. Very nice camera. There are the MJ, or rather the Mu cameras from Olympus. These are really expensive now. This is a Mu 1 with an f3.5 lens, 35mm f3.5 lens. These are really nice cameras. They're really small, they're really discreet. They've got this lovely little clamshell design. In fact, let me show you more closely. So there's that beautiful clamshell design, and it just slides open and shut with the merest touch. If there was a battery in here, the lens would pop out at this point as well, but I don't have a battery at the moment for this one. The shutter button's on the top there. There's very little to do. It's an autofocus camera. It's also an auto exposure camera. It does have a self-timer button on the top, and it has a flash built in as well. These tend to be auto everything, auto wind on, auto rewind. They take a battery and they take a fair old bit of power, of course, but that's the type of camera they are. They were made from, what, gosh, the late 80s right up until probably the mid 2000s when film camera production stopped. The Mu cameras are beautiful little things, but they're really expensive now. The Mu 2 with an f2.8 lens is around about £300–400. I've even seen it go for more than that, and I don't think these are the best value. I think unless you particularly want one, think in another direction. And one other direction you might want to think in is this, the L35AF from Nikon. It's a bigger camera than the Mu camera. You can see that it is a fair old bit bigger. I don't know if you can see that from here, but they are quite about a quarter again as wide and a little taller too. However, they are a traditional camera shape. They've got a great grip. They're far more practical than the Mu cameras. Let me show you more closely. And just like the Mu 2, this has a 35mm f2.8 Nikon lens. It's auto focus, auto load, auto rewind, auto exposure, auto flipping everything, and it's really nice and simple to use too. And a great thing about this one is it's got a little indicator in the window to show you where you're focused. Are you focused on the middle distance? Are you focused very near? Are you focused on the far background? So you know that whether you're focused properly on your subject or not. These are quite expensive as well. I was lucky in that I managed to buy this one for £100 about a year ago, but they're usually twice that or over. However, a good solution to the solution for the Mu cameras would be one of these, and there are quite a few of these by other camera manufacturers. This is a Konica one. This again is a really nicely made camera. It's a quality item. It's not a junk throwaway toy camera. It's a quality item, just like the Nikon and the Mu. In fact, this feels the strongest of the lot, to be honest. I think this has got some metal in its construction, and I'll just show you this one. So there again, you can see we've got a 35mm f2.8 lens. We've got a built-in flash, we've got auto wind, auto rewind, and auto exposure as well. So really, this does everything that the Nikon camera can do. I think this is one of the best kept secrets in film photography at the moment. So between me and you, don't tell anyone. These are going really cheaply. The model is the C35MF, and the fashionable wind doesn't seem to have caught up with this one yet. The winds of fashion have not caught up. I think they will, so grab them while they're cheap. These cameras are about £25 to £30. They do everything that the L35AF does, and they do everything that the Mu camera does as well. These are sometimes thought of as not proper cameras, maybe because they're not quite as involving as a rangefinder or an SLR. They don't have manual settings, there's no manual focus, so maybe it's thought that they're not as involving. But what these do is they liberate you from all those technical matters, and they leave you free to concentrate on the image and to make the art, which is what we're trying to do here. People, all the tech stuff, that's all detail, that all goes into making the art. The tech is irrelevant in itself. What matters is the art. And if you can find a camera that's going to help you make your art, then that's the camera for you. So let's check out the 110 camera as well. As I said earlier, these were ubiquitous in the, well, really from the early 70s right up until probably the mid to late 80s. They started to kind of die out and not be quite so popular anymore. It's an interesting little format, and they can be very interesting little cameras. This one is the Rollei A110. Let's just have a closer look at this one. You'll see that this is an open and shut camera, and that's how you advance the film. When you do that, that advances the film. Moving it closed switches it off, opening it up switches it on. Here is the focus control. Whoops, it doesn't have far to move, and there are symbols for focus. This one has a very nice lens. It's an f2.8 Tessar, probably a tiny focal length. It doesn't say, but I don't know, it's probably something like 15 or 20 mil or something like that. I don't know, but a small focal length. They're simple viewfinder cameras for the most part, so you just look through the viewfinder here, advance your film, move your focus control, and fire your shot with this button here. Very nice and quiet shutter. That really is quite lovely. So these are very unobtrusive, very tiny cameras, and they do give interesting results. The quality isn't quite as good as 35mm because they don't have the resolution, but they are kind of fun. Let's have a closer look at more popular sort of camera. This is a plastic camera, really. Let's have some focus, please. In fact, not even really, it is a plastic camera. It's very, very light. It's very, very simple. It has a wind-on control at the back, which you wind on until it clicks, and you then press the shutter button on the top there, and you get a little click, and the shutter opens and closes, and there we are. The focus slider is at the top on this one. 3 positions, nice and simple. It's very light, it's very plasticky. Could well be a plastic lens in there, I'm not sure. It's got a cover over it, so I don't know what that is. But, you know, they make entertaining images and they make entertaining cameras as well. The only problem, as I say, with them is that the film is not so common and it's not really so easy to get it developed, although you can get it developed. They're nice cameras. I like the 110 format cameras, and some of them got really quite fancy. Pentax made 2 SLR models. I know Kodak made a rangefinder model. Canon made a rangefinder model. I think it was, what was the model? Was it the ED? I've forgotten now, I can't remember. But they made a rangefinder model, so there were various models of these that were really quite nice, with nice quality lenses and, you know, nicely made, and were really nice things to own in their day. But they are fun cameras and they're worth having a play with if you want to play with some film. Okay, if you want to do some instant photography, you're going to need either a Fuji camera, which are still made. Fuji still do make instant cameras, or you're going to need a Polaroid, and this is a Polaroid. Here it is. This is a Polaroid land camera. This is the SX70, and these will make you instant prints. All of the rest of these cameras, you're going to take the film out, either develop it yourself or send it off somewhere to be developed. This camera will spit out an image immediately you take it, and that's pretty cool. Now, this is a pretty fancy Polaroid camera. This is about as fancy as Polaroid cameras get, actually. This has a glass lens. It's an SLR. There's a very complex system of Fresnel or Fresnel mirrors and all manner of prisms inside it, which bring the image to your eye and then take it very cleverly to the Polaroid film, which nestles down on the bottom here, right inside the camera there. So this is a fancy one. A good one of these will cost £250 to £300. There are simpler versions of Polaroid cameras, the Polaroid 600 and various other names. They're mostly plastic cameras, viewfinder cameras, but they're lots of fun. They're great, and they'll still spit out an instant image in that magical Polaroid way. And you can buy those cameras. The cameras are really cheap, actually. Those cameras are really cheap, 20, 30, 40 pounds. But they may have a plastic lens. They're not the quality of these SX70s, and they're really just a snapshot camera. Lots of fun, but a snapshot camera. Let's have a closer look at this while we're at it. There's the SX70, and it's a really unusual thing. It's a very odd, awkward shape, and it's quite a large camera when it's unfolded. There's the viewfinder. Bit tricky to look through, but it is a good viewfinder. Nice big coverage. Not a lot of control on these cameras. We've got a lighten or darken control to make the image lighter or darker. That's about it. That's as much control as you have on these cameras. They were always made that way. I think their inventor, Dr. Land, wanted them to be really, really simple. He didn't want people to be messing around with dials and switches and light meters and so on. And you know, that's a really laudable ambition. But of course the good Dr. Land didn't realise that a lot of us like messing around with light meters and controls and switches and things like that. So there we are. As I say, Fujifilm still make new instant cameras, either the very small Instax, tiny little credit card images, or the bigger images Instax wide. Pros and cons with these, well, they're instant, you get the image instantly, but very hard to make blow-ups. If you want to enlarge a Polaroid image, well, let me show you a Polaroid image. Here's a Polaroid image I shot the other day, and this is the piece of film that gets exposed, and this is where you see the image. How will you blow that up? There is no negative. It would involve a complex process of rephotographing and all manner of malarkey to increase the size of this image. So pretty much what comes out of the camera is pretty much what you're stuck with. Nice cameras though. I do love Polaroids. My first camera was a Polaroid, really simple Polaroid, one of the plastic peel apart film ones, and that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that too. So there we are. I do hope that has made some sense and made things a little more clear in the world of film cameras, which film camera suits you, what the qualities of the various film cameras are, and which one you'd like to go out and spend your hard-earned cash on. Film is a beautiful medium. It is getting expensive these days, but prices can't keep rising forever, or goodness knows what will happen, so it'll have to come to an end soon, I would hope. And we've still got this magical technology at what I do hope will end up being at least vaguely reasonable prices. A beautiful old technology, well worth exploring, well worth having as a backup system to your digital system, even if you only use it occasionally and explore how film works and what kind of images you can make, and just get the feel, the more tactile, involving feel of a film camera, and start to really have the direct experience of light instead of having it mediated by a digital sensor. So that is it from me for today. I do hope this episode has been useful. Please don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to ring that bell thing before you go. Please do consider subscribing. We're nearly at 30,000 subs. I would like to get there, and we're so near. So do give us a sub if you can. Many, many, many thanks to everybody who has subscribed over the years, whether you've just subscribed to us or whether you subscribed some time ago, whether you subscribed and then left and came back, whether you subscribed and stayed with us, whether you subscribed and left and that was that. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Many thanks, everybody, for the subs. Similarly, many thanks go to patrons, without whom this channel could not do what it does, as I've said many times. So many thanks to everybody who's a patron now, to everybody who's signed up to become a patron years and years ago, who's been with us for a long time, and everybody who's just signed up to become a patron now. Anybody who's become a patron and left, many thanks for your patronage and for your support over the years. People who've stayed with us, many thanks to you as well for your continued and very valued support, and that is a heartfelt thanks to everybody. If you like the content on this channel, please consider becoming a patron yourself over at patreon.com/Zenography. You can do that for as little as just $1 per month. Please do consider that if you like the channel. That's it from me for now, and I will see you next time for some more Zenography.